So, what's, I guess, the biggest difference between Tsunami 2 and the original, and are people starting to realize like the added features on them, or?
They are. As people get them more and more in their hands, they're starting to realize a lot of the cool things that we built into it, that this is not just simply a rehash or a rebuilding of the original Tsunami. One of the things that kind of gets lost is with the new product, we've condensed a lot of the original sounds onto, multiple sounds onto a single decoder to give the customer the choice to pick which sound plays from the decoder.
Okay.
But in all of that is kind of lost a little bit of all of the extra stuff we've added in. For example, one of the biggest features that we've improved as far from the original Tsunami to the Tsunami 2 is what's called the reactive dynamic digital exhaust.
Okay.
And reactive dynamic digital exhaust basically reads the load on the motor and determines how hard that motor's working to pull that locomotive and the train either uphill, downhill, whatnot, and adjusts the sound of the exhaust to match. So in the case of a steam engine, it will increase the tone of the chuff as it's working its way upgrade, and then it'll back off the chuff as it goes down.
Okay.
But in the diesel, this is where we've had that we've had the reactive dynamic digital exhaust in the previous Tsunami with the steam decoders.
Right.
But we've improved it, the algorithms inside of it.
Yeah.
So now we've actually been able to include it into the diesel decoder. So on the diesel decoder, you actually hear the prime mover notch up or notch down based on how hard the locomotive is working, and it'll increase the intensity or reduce the intensity. So if you're starting a train downgrade, you could simply release the brakes and crack the throttle a little bit, and that prime mover may never start turning or notching up. You just coast downhill. And with this, it's actually been able to give a more realistic effect, because now you're running your train instead of worrying about what notch you're in, say with manual notching. And we've also included the ability to notch up and notch down manually if your customer decides to, or if the user decides he wants to increase it. The best part about all of this is you never once lose control of your locomotive, so you always have throttle control. And it's reacting to how hard the locomotive is working. So when you're starting that heavy train, you crank the throttle up a little bit, you're going to hear that prime mover notching up to get the train going, and then you'll hear it settle back down into a steady, maintaining speed pace.
Okay.
And that's one of the biggest features. I've been having a lot of fun with the brakes, though. We've really reinvented how the brakes work on the decoder. On the previous decoder, you could hit the F11 brakes and produce a brake squeal, which represents the independent brakes on the locomotive itself.
Right.
And then you could set a braking rate that would actually slow the locomotive to a stop. But what's really cool about the Tsunami 2 is we've added in the ability to reproduce the sounds of the automatic brake or the train brakes.
Right.
So when the engineer in the front, he goes into train brake mode, he'll cycle the compressor and notch up the prime mover on the diesel to move that compressor faster to charge the train line. And the train line, there's a minimum amount of pressure that's maintained through the pipes throughout the entire train. And when that pressure is applied, it removes the shoes off the wheel.
Right.
And so with the Tsunami 2, we've reproduced that to give you a ability to mimic that on your layout. And then when you apply the F11, when you're in train brake mode, now you hear the 5-pound reduction in the air pipes, and in conjunction with sound car, which is really cool, you can have the F11 apply on the sound car. Now you'll hear the squealing on the cars, which is the shoes being applied. But the locomotive doesn't use its brakes when you're in train brake mode, because otherwise pulling those thousands of tons behind them would wear those brake shoes out very quickly. So you can more realistically follow the way the real railroads work.
There's a lot more options.
A lot more options, and like I said, we're just scratching the surface on it. I could talk to you for 2 days about all the features that we've built into it, and we will to the consumer July, I believe it's 13th and 14th that week. That Thursday and Friday we'll be doing a Soundtraxx Academy again this year.
Oh, cool.
So they can come out and learn all this firsthand from us.
It's amazing how far it's come from just horn and bell.
Yes.
It's like just keeps evolving, and I can't imagine you doing any more to it. Quite honestly, it just it's the real deal. It's the real train.
And we've been having a lot of fun with it, and especially some of the changes in the Steam decoder, just from the original Steam. You can choose. We've got on the Tsunami 2. There's 10 exhaust chuffs to choose from. There's 63 different whistles to choose from. There's 12 different bells with different ring rates. So you can do a hand rung bell or an air ringer. You can choose 10 different air compressor sounds to choose from. There's 8 steam dynamos, and then beyond that, you can also choose a lifting or a non-lifting type injector sounds. So that's what injects the water into the boiler. You can select a power reverse or a manual Johnson bar. You can select the fuel type, so you can do a wood burner, a hand shoveled coal with an auger, and an oil burner with an atomizer, and you hear those different sounds in the background. You can set up an articulated exhaust, a regular conventional rod, and you can do even a 3-cylinder. And what that allows you to really reproduce just about any locomotive that's out there. So some of my friends have been giving me a hard time because I personally modeled diesels in 1978.
Okay.
But I've got more steam engines equipped with Tsunami 2 right now than I do with the diesels, just because there's so many cool things now that we've
Different
taken the steam
features.
decoder so much more that I'm having a lot more fun with installing the steam right now.
Does it explain what you've been talking about in the catalog at all, or you got to go online, or?
Both, actually. We have the catalog's designed to be basically an overview, and you can get those free. We can send them to you, no problem. It just kind of gives you an overview of the different board formats, the different features, and just a highlight of what the different products that we offer and how we can supply your DCC and train operation needs.
Right.
We do have a lot more information on website, including specifics. We're working on getting a lot more videos up online of how-tos, kind of we've got one up there right now that we did is calibrating the dynamic digital exhaust that we were talking about earlier with the load change on the diesel engines and steam engines. So we have a overview video up there now that you can watch, and we're working on putting some more of these together over time. On the website, you can hear sound samples of all of the sounds on our decoder, and you can see how which decoders. Like, say for example, on the diesel decoder, because there's so much stuff that we've included on there that we've had to have 4 different diesel decoders grouped by family. So there's an EMD, there's a GE, there's a Alco decoder, and each of those have up to 10 different prime movers, or I'm sorry, 9 different prime movers put onto one decoder that you can choose, and it covers the entire spectrum of the production range of those particular manufacturers.
Right.
The 4th one is called the Baldwin and Others. I jokingly refer to it as the land of misfit toys, because it's the one that didn't have all the different families that didn't have enough to justify a separate part number and a separate file. So you've got Baldwin and Others, you have the Galloping Goose, there's the Fairbanks Morse, and then there's the Whitcomb, new Whitcomb that's on. So it makes it a lot easier.
That's the biggest problem when you have so many decoders. It's like, well, which one to pick? So you guys are definitely streamlining it and making it easier for the consumer. But I think the consumer is going to need to get the Tsunami 2 in their hands and really see and hear all the features.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be the biggest thing going forward. Once they start to really have the product and really use it, then I think the orders will just really increase, because it's one thing changing the name or whatever, but until they really hear the difference and see the features or hear about it about the new features, sometimes they don't know, they just see a product number. Right. So
well, just some of the other things that are kind of a behind the curtains, if you will, just some of the other things we've improved is the hardware that's inside the decoder.
Okay.
We've got a more powerful and a more efficient processor, so it uses less power. So it's less susceptible to interruptions in power.
Right.
We've got stronger amplifiers. So we've got, in the HO line, we've got up to a 2-watt amplifier in the models, or in the decoders now, that you can really get that nice loud sound out of it.
And you guys are the factories in the USA. I mean,
yes, we build all of our decoders in Durango, Colorado.
Wow. So that's great.
That's fantastic, and the good news is it's very quick for us to be able to respond to changes in the market. Let's say you have a new model shows up that everybody wants to put the new Tsunami in. You suddenly find yourself out. Well, you call me up and you order a bunch, and I don't have enough on the shelf. Well, usually within a few weeks I can have them to you, as opposed to having to wait for a slow boat from overseas to bring them.
We're talking about 6 months out.
Yeah, exactly, and sometimes it can be, when you're dealing with factories overseas.
Yeah, well, I did notice that DCC and DCC systems has been growing rapidly.
Mhm.
We've been doing double digits increases every year. It just seems to be the norm now. It's not hard. It's not scary. It's the norm. This is what you do. People have older engines and they want a newer type sound.
Mhm.
They just buy the newer decoders and they drop it in because the engines don't go bad. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with the engine. It's
Yep.
just the sounds that change.
Absolutely.
It's like a new car with the new electronics and stuff. So all you do is just plop it in, and then it's an amazing thing how it became its own individual business and the growth is unbelievable. People are not afraid of it. It's just simple stuff, and the quality. The quality in this stuff, very, very, very few returns, and most of those, whatever those little returns are, it's the customer made a mistake here or there. And you do have a helpline or something at
Yes.
your place where you can help people over the phone to kind of like just get them to get it right if they don't understand something.
Correct. If anybody has any problem with the decoder, whatever the problem is, whether it's something they did, setting up a new feature, or if they just want to, hey, tell me how this works. We do have people at the office that answer the phone line as a human being answers the phone line, which is fantastic. And Justin is the primary face of our customer support and tech help.
Cool.
So he'll be the one you talk to. He's very good at what he does, and he's very he knows the product very, very well.
Yep.
And so he can help you with anything you need. And then if he's tied up or anything, we usually have one or two other people there that can help out as well, so that you're not
I
being
know a couple
ignored,
of times we called up from the store here while the customer was in the store and just solved the issue just like that. It was very good.
We want to make sure you guys are giving them the right information. We want to make sure that we answer the customer's needs too, because nothing's worse than telling a customer I don't know, and they say, well, can you find out? And you say, that doesn't leave the customer with a good feeling, and you guys are great about that, because you guys, Kenny and I talk all the time, and we're on the phone, and we get him his answers really quickly.
Now with this, so you have Tsunami 2, which is like the Cadillac of your sound system,
the flagship
sound speakers, but now you also have the Economy line. Do you see a lot of people looking for more of a more economical solution, or do you see it being mixed and?
It's a little bit of mixed. Now, as you kind of use the word economical, the Economy is a play on the word economy, economical, and tsunami. So its lineage is from the original Tsunami. We actually, compared the original Tsunami to the new Economy, the Economy is actually a better decoder.
Okay.
What we did is we did take a few of the features away so that we had some product differentiation between the Tsunami 2, which was in plans, and the Economy.
So really it's just a more affordable sound decoder.
Correct.
You get a little less than all the options, but...
Correct. So like say, for example, we talked about the Steam decoder earlier. On the Steam decoder and the Economy, you get 4 exhaust chuffs, 16 whistles, you get 4 bells, 4 air compressors to choose from. So the sounds of selection's limited. There are a handful of new sounds that are mixed into those, so it's not just the old stuff again. But it does use the new firmware structure, and when a feature is shared between the two decoders, it shares the same CV. So that way you don't have confusion. You don't have to relearn 2 separate products. The original idea was that from us, we were looking at the low-cost market. There was a lot of products out there, but quite frankly, it followed the adage, you get what you pay for. And in that price market, you were getting a subpar sound system, but it made noise and it did what, chuff, bell, and whatnot, And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to offer a quality sound in that price point. And then maybe if somebody was looking strictly at the budget cost, let's say I need to fix 10 locomotives, but I don't have all of it for the Tsunami 2. Well, this will give them a middle affordable ground that they could maybe use on some of their secondary units, and then that way it'll help defray some of the costs of converting a fleet over, for example, and then they can have their favorite ones or their primary ones use the Tsunami 2. The other side of it is we get a lot of calls from people who are fairly new in the hobby and bought a model, like you said, that didn't come with sound, and they just want to put something in it, maybe for the grandkids, maybe
Right.
just, you know, because they're starting to get into it.
They don't want to break the bank.
They don't want to break
Yeah.
the bank because they don't know how well they're going to, how
Like
much
it.
they're going to do
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
or if they're going to continue on, or they're
Right,
just
right.
trying it out and see how the hobby goes. And this gives them an affordable option, so they're not getting an inferior quality
Right,
for the
right,
price,
right.
and it gives them that encouragement to then grow into the bigger decoders down the line. You know, the better decoders, the
It's a
Tsunami
good
2.
starting point. And,
It's a starting point, and like I
But
said,
you're getting good features.
You're
It's
getting
not
a quality
like it's
decoder.
A crap starting point.
correct. And one of the biggest questions we get is economy sound value. We make a product for Bachman called Sound Value, which is a very, very basic entry-level sound system, and the economy is not that. That's its own thing. That's something we build for Bachman, and it gives them an affordable price that they can reduce the sound price of their locomotives to entice people to buy more sound stuff.
Right. Right.
The Economy, like I said, is a better decoder than what the original Tsunami is. It has most of the same features. The only thing you really lost between the original Tsunami and the Economy is you lost the ability to add reverb to the sounds, which is kind of a slight, quick echoing tone. You lost Fireman Fred, and Fireman Fred is the sound of shoveling coal, turning wrenches, things
Everybody
like that.
loves Fireman Fred.
Fireman Fred is really cool, especially in the Tsunami 2, because now we've added some new sounds. Just real quick aside, you can do a frame check, and you'll hear it. You'll hear different sounds running. You'll hear the ash pan dumping. You'll hear a lot more different sounds.
I think
But-
Nancy should call it Fireman George.
Well, the history of this is actually pretty funny because the Fireman Ed, or Fireman Fred, was actually named Fireman Ed's in our diesel. It's what we call it on the diesel. But Fireman Fred was originally named after one of the gentlemen when we first did the original Tsunami, who helped us get some of the original Fireman Fred recordings.
Wow.
And so we
funny.
named it Fireman Fred.
Cool.
What was funny was that future products of competitors' products called their stuff Fireman Fred, thinking it was an industry standard term. And so we're over here going, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, so
funny.
inside we kind of laughed about it a
No,
little
it's
bit.
a
But
good-
it's great
good name.
because
I like it.
it's a
Yeah.
very generic name,
Yeah.
so it sound and
Catchy.
it became catchy,
Yeah.
and other people used it. But getting back to the Economy, so you lost the Fireman Fred, you lost the reverb, and your sound selection was a little bit more streamlined.
Right.
Otherwise, you got a lot of cool new features. One of the newest features that we've added into the Economy and is also in the Tsunami 2 is what's called our Flex Map. And the Flex Map allows you to take any function button and assign it to any button you want from 0 to 28. So, for example, if you wanted the headlight to be on function 12, in the original Tsunami, you couldn't do that. And anyone following the NMRA recommended practice, which both of our decoders still have,
Right,
it's
right.
just overridden by the Flex Map. So if you want to go back to the old way, you can.
Yeah.
But you couldn't move the headlight to function 12.
Yeah.
Not many people would want to do it, but you were limited on what you could do. And so the Flex Map opens it up and allows you to put any function, effect, lighting, sound, or whatever on any button. So you can make the headlight go on with function 28 if you wanted. And what's really cool about that is it gives people the ability now to match either any of our stuff that's been out there in the past if they have a certain function mapping that they like,
Right.
or let's say for argument's sake if they have a competitor's product that they like that function mapping better, you can make ours match their stuff however you want.
Right.
But what we've done is not just that, we've made it easier. So in the previous generation, the CV was assigned to the function button, and an addition of the bits determined what functioned or what effects turned on. Well, what we did is we flipped the chart, so now the CV is assigned to the function, i.e. the horn, the bell, the headlight, and the value in the CV is the button that turns it on. So if you wanted to move the horn, let's say to, let's say function 12 for whatever, it's defaulted at 2, you would just find the headlights, or I'm sorry, the horn CV, which doing it by memory I believe is 1.297. You just set it to a value of 12, and now function 12 blows your horn.
Okay.
The Flex Map also allows you to have certain sound effects and or lighting effects turn on automatically when you're moving forward, moving in reverse, stopped and forward, stopped and reverse, and you can even map a light to an e-stop.
Okay.
So the emergency stop, when you hit it with like some of the command stations,
Right.
it just sends a, hey, local 1000, come to an instant stop.
Right.
You can map a function to come on with that. So a lot of these models nowadays are coming with more lighting effects, gyro lights and things like that, including most people are familiar with the red emergency lights on the front of, like, say, the UP844, the FEF,
Yeah,
or and some of the other ones like the New York Central and some of those others had a red flashing. You can map it to the e-stop. So when your locomotive abruptly stops, that emergency
That's
gyro
in the
light.
Economy?
It's in the economy and the tsunami too.
Wow, that's impressive.
So
That's a lot of features.
there's a lot of stuff, and like I said, we have a 2-day class on it that we do. So it's really difficult to explain everything that you can do, because I could talk for an hour just on the improvements of the steam decoder
Right, alone.
Well, right now it's been 6 hours. We're gonna have to this down. I do have a question. Is there something that people do wrong pretty commonly when they install these things, or no, or
I don't know. It's hard to say that people are doing something wrong. We try to make it as easy as possible. We've got a few different board formats, and the wires are color coded. I would say probably the biggest thing that people would do is probably either not paying attention to what they're doing, and they may be trying to do shortcuts. One of the most common ones is not properly insulating the motor. A lot of times
on older engines? Or
on older engines, so most of the newer ones you should be fine. There's usually separate wires, things like that. But dating back to some of the original, like the Athearn Blue Box, where the track power is carried through the frame, and then that frame was touched by a clip on the bottom of the motor, which then transferred power to the brushes. If you don't properly isolate that, then you've got that direct power, and if you wire it but don't cut those tabs off and then put some insulative tape over it, you're going to have problems, because you're going to have track power feeding into your motor circuit and potentially damage the components. So really, I'd say, and that's really kind of just guessing.
On older stuff.
On older stuff is usually the biggest thing. Most of the newer stuff, for example, like some of the Athearn Genesis stuff that's out there, you just lift the board out and put this board in place, make your solder connections, and put it in.
Is there a way they should be holding these boards or anything? Or
ideally, you want to be in a grounded location. Either a hard surface or have some kind of an anti-static ground on you or something like that. Just because walking around on carpets and things like that builds up static electricity, and they tend to discharge. We do try to build some parameters to help dissipate that, so you're less likely to do it, but it exists. One of the, just thinking about this now that you asked the question, there is one thing that comes up somewhat regularly, but not regularly enough to be a big issue. But a lot of people have been building brass models for years, and they use soldering and flux. And the problem is that when they go to install electronics, they're using that same solder and flux. And one of the most common brand is a brand called TIX. And it's designed for brass model building, so it's got a higher acidic content. Well, what happens if you're using that when you're installing decoders, it'll crystallize on the board, and because of its acidic content, it starts attacking the components.
Oh, wow.
So when you're soldering using electronics, you want to make sure that you're using a flux and solder designed for work with electronics, so you don't have any of those issues.
Yep. Makes sense.
Let's just, I guess, talk into the Blackstone models a little.
Okay.
We've been starting to get into the HO3, gauge and carrier product. And it's actually doing well for us.
Good.
It's starting to pick up. We've definitely seen an increase in business in the HO3 market. On our email list, I've definitely seen an increase on people growing in this segment over certain other gauges. So it's interesting. I mean, you guys make a beautiful product. It's very highly detailed.
Yeah, the amount of detail on these items, they're like super detailed items. It's
Yes.
Spectacular.
The track is awesome. I love your new track. I think that's going to bring in a lot of new people into the market. And you mentioned last time that you could run this alongside HO trains.
Yes, sir.
So
here's a couple of things that's overlooked. Number one is when modelers are building layouts at home, they have a limited amount of space.
Right.
And so one of the things that they always constantly have to do is compromise that space, because you have to get these locomotives around corners and things like that. So they want as broad a radius they can, but space dictates that they're down to, say, I don't know, 20, 25-inch radiuses. Right. And big 85-foot passenger cars just don't look right running around at 25. They can do it, but it just doesn't look right. So the other side of it is our towns are so close together that you may have the locomotive in one town, but your caboose is in the other town. And so your distance is compressed. HON3 in narrow gauge really lends itself well to that compromise, because the narrow gauge was originally developed up in the mountains for tight radius curves, short trains, steep grades going up to different levels, 2 or 3, 4%. It was fairly standard on a lot of the narrow gauge stuff. And so when you're building a layout in that same place, you could do a 20, 25-inch radius and you're not compromising, actually. You're actually pretty close to what the real railroads would have been running around. And the cars are shorter and smaller because the rails are closer together, so the equipment is physically smaller.
Right.
So your shorter trains and those tighter curves don't look quite as caricature, I guess it would be a way to do it. Well, in the heyday of the narrow gauge, they would have yards where you would have tracks, and because manual labor at that point was cheap, so they would manually unload one car, put it into the standard gauge boxcar, and go to the rest of the world, or unload from the supplies from the standard gauge boxcar to the narrow gauge boxcar, and then take it up into the mountains to the supply camps and mines and stuff like that. So it gives you more or less a universal industry that's right there, that you can put any type of car, put the respective car on the standard gauge track, and then you've got a universal industry. So it fits in very well.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, because HO is a huge market, so if it can be a not a replacement, but an addition to. I think once people really start to see the quality of the product, and some people don't even understand the difference, but once we start to kind of explain it out there, I think it will be more and more increasingly bigger. Sure.
Is there a certain time period this marketed, like engines are, or cars?
We try to stick around with the 40s, 30s and 40s, and because that seems to be the most popular time era of what people model. Narrow gauge was around before the turn of the century, and lasts through today, quite honestly, with the Durango and Silverton, Cumberson, Toltec, and there's other narrow gauge railroads around the country, like the East Broad Top was a Pennsylvania area. You got the White Pass and Yukon up in Alaska, and there's a bunch of them around. So it wasn't just a Colorado thing. And so with our latest release of our consolidations, the C19s, we do have a few different versions that are very Colorado narrow gauge specific, because of course that's the biggest modeling community, but we've also got a couple of generic ones in there that can give you the ability to model something different outside of Colorado. There's the early turn of the century version, which is the Russia Iron Blue boiler with a diamond stack, so it gives you that nice early date, and then you can take one of the other ones and make some minor modifications.
Now, what about the new engines that you have coming out? The Mikado K28?
The K28 and K36. These are two locomotive projects we announced a little bit ago.
We actually took a lot of back orders on
and that's great. That's great to hear. Right now we're a little behind schedule.
Okay.
We are still working on them. They are still active projects. The Blackstone team that have been working on it, it always seems like the last 5% takes the most amount of time. So most of the drawings are done.
Okay.
There's some minor things that we're working out, because we have to kind of build this design to be manufactured as well as molded overseas, because we don't as much as we would love to do all of the things in-house, we just don't have the capabilities and the provisions to do all the injection molding and the assembly here. So we're doing as much of the design work here as we can. So what I was saying is, it came up over the weekend where they were talking about the price of our models, and you mentioned the number of parts, and they mentioned it this way. They said, if you bought an Athearn blue box locomotive, for example, was somewhere around $30-35, Then they would go to the wall and they would start picking off detail parts.
Yep.
And they would pick it off, and then and decals, paint, everything, put it on there, and it ended up being $125 to $130 for that locomotive with the detail parts. It's like, well, nowadays, all those detail parts are already thrown in there. They're already installed. They're painted, and they're straight, so they're guaranteed to look right. And you know, and you don't have to spend the time doing it. Now you can weather it, install the Tsunami or the Econami decoders into the model, and put it on the track and run it for about the same price, and it's a bargain now. And so with the steam engines, you think of the old days in HO standard gauge, you had Riverosa, you had some Bachmann stuff and things like that, but they were all molded on, cast on details.
Right.
So again, you start looking at all the details that we put in the models, and we're able to model the specific aspects of that particular locomotive as it existed. For example, one of the ones we have in our product in the consolidations is the 346, and the 346 was wrecked at one point, and we modeled it as the post wreck. So some of the different things you'll notice is they actually used a railroad tie timber as part of the pilot, and they've got a couple of different domes on it because when it was wrecked, of course, it damaged some of the stuff. So you've got you've got a steel cab, you have some different domes, and you've got that wooden timber on the pilot, and you put it next to an early version of 346 and you say, oh wow, look at there's differences. And so you get that model specific aspect of the products in a ready to run model with sound.
All right, George, let's shoot like a maybe a promo video for the HOM3
Okay.
Blackstone models, and we'll definitely thank you for everything and all your support and getting us into your company and DCC, and we definitely appreciate it. And this is George from Soundtraxx, by the way. I'm not sure if we introduced you in the beginning of the video, but he's the DCC specialist, and always a good friend and good person, and truly cares about the industry. And so thank you for everything that.
The only thing is, can you send someone a little more knowledgeable next time?
Well, we could try, but I don't know that.
It was very good. A good man. Good man. Good company
as always.
And a good company.
Appreciate it.
And if anybody decides, any of your customers decide they want to come out and ride the Durango in Silverton, they're welcome to come tour our facility.
Oh, wow.
We manufacture all the decoders. We're proud of what we do. Call ahead. We do tours at 4:30 in the afternoon. Just call us ahead. Let us know what day you're coming. And
just call George. He'll fly you in personally on his jet.
But we'll be happy to show you. We'll make sure somebody's there to show you around, because
that's great.
There's a lot of cool machines that we have, and because we do it in house, it's really we're really proud of it. And
that's a cool tour, and it's if you're really into trains, that's got to be unbelievable.
Always wanted to do it.
Once in a
Never done it
lifetime
yet.
experience.
well, the good news is for you guys, dealer training is now July 26th through the 29th.
Okay.
So it doesn't conflict with anything anymore.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I may be getting married around that time, so the bachelor party.
You always keep coming up with reasons.
Well, maybe we could do the bachelor party in Colorado.
There you go. Perfect.
All right, George. Thank you
Sounds
so much.
good.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Okay.